So let me conclude the problem statement with globalization. Despite the many merits of globalization, first of all, the main beneficiaries of it are these multinational corporations. 50 companies account for about 26% of the GDP. And these companies leverage globalization to enhance their efficiency, to optimize their location, to specialize, scale up, and this might explain why we have so many few dominant companies in the world. And some capable countries, consumers and companies are indebted for globalization, but many of them are not. It's not equally spreading these benefits. So first of all, we see that some rich countries are losing certain jobs, activities to less developed countries, and therefore the employees, which are usually the blue-collar employees in those countries, are not benefiting from these trends. We see closure of businesses, loss of jobs, and even though new types of jobs are being created, it doesn't allow for catch-up, and those who were dismissed are not the ones to take these new jobs necessarily. And they are losing not only their jobs, but also their terms of employment. And when a job moves from the United States to Indonesia, probably the employee in Indonesia doesn't get the same social benefits and perks that the employee in the US got. So employee rights are not respected, and some of the poor countries are not participating in this party. They are just being exploited by these multinational corporations that take their natural resources. So we see that globalization contributes to income inequality, and even in China, which was one of the main beneficiaries because of globalization opening up of their borders, we see that there is a much increasing disparity between the high earners and the low earners, even though on average everyone in China gained from that. So we see that governments have hard time dealing not only with this, but in general with economic issues, because globalization provides companies with the ability to relocate, play with different tax regulations, and essentially sometimes become economically stronger than countries, but also use this bargaining power to overcome policy hurdles. So it seems that these multinational corporations are exploiting this situation in terms of avoiding taxes, etc. And globalization is not only a problem in and of itself, but it inflates, it increases the other problems like economic inequality, giving power to multinational corporations, or consumption of resources. And if we think about this further, we realize that this company is a globalization in a way creates further hurdles. For instance, it's very efficient when it works. So we can get products fast and cheap. But if there is a problem in the value chain, for instance, a natural disaster or a war on Ukraine, then someone in Egypt will be hungry. So if there is a famine in Japan, then we'll have problems producing cars in the US. So the system is very fragile in this sense. It's not resilient. And the local problem now becomes a global problem, much like a local game could expand into a global game. In addition, globalization has an impact on society. So even in countries which are relatively traditional, where they have a progressive culture, we see that this global culture, consumption culture, has been taking over, and societies become more fragile, less cohesive, and are losing their traditional values. So this new culture is all about economic gains and consumption, and this is not serving society as I've tried to illustrate. So what can be done about this? We can try to rethink globalization. And one of the recent trends is to recruit multinational corporations to be the leaders of the SDGs, to change their corporate mission, and if they can cause so much harm, probably they can also have a positive impact. But we are not taking care of the incentives. Why should they do that? They might do that if it serves their profit purposes, but usually they won't. And prior efforts to do that, for instance, Kofi Annan's effort with Global Compact, bringing together corporations and nations to make globalization better, failed. And there is no reason to believe that this will succeed, no matter how frame it, because at the end of the day, countries and companies do want to leverage globalization for profit, for growth, and this is not an easily solved solution. So, in fact, I found a very candid quote in the OECD report from 2017 saying, we urgently need to fix globalization, but we don't really know how. So if you know how, call the OECD. I'm not sure that there is an easy solution.